We have this traffic stop, and it looks, if you watch the cell phone video, as is Arthur McNeil is doing nothing wrong, and the cops, just for no reason, smash out his car window, drag him out of the car, throw him on the ground, handcuff him. And if a civilian did that, he'd be in handcuffs himself. So how can it possibly be right for the police to do that? Well, when police are acting in self-defense, they largely have the same self-defense rights as all of us. It's not that much different for police than it is for civilians. But the police have authority to use force under circumstances where a civilian would not. For example, the police have a legal privilege to initiate the use of physical force, which you and I do not have. As civilians, we cannot be the initial physical aggressors in a confrontation. If we do, we lose the right of self-defense. Self-defense is intended to allow us to defend ourselves against someone else's initiation of unlawful force, not to allow us to initiate unlawful force in someone else and then try to justify it as self-defense. And there's very few circumstances in which we as a civilian can initiate force and have it be lawful. Society doesn't want that. Society doesn't want civilians going around and initiating force on each other. In part, that's what we have police for. We have select individuals that we train and authorize and give a badge to, make them swear an oath. And those people are given the privilege as law enforcement officers to initiate force to compel compliance with lawful demands. When a police officer gives you a lawful command, you are legally bound to obey that command. And if you don't obey the command, the officer is privileged to initiate force on you to compel your compliance. And one of the most common circumstances in which you're subject to lawful commands from a police officer, because a police officer can't simply order people about willy-nilly, but one circumstance in which he has a much broadened authority to issue lawful commands is during a traffic stop, during a lawful traffic stop. A police officer can demand all kinds of things from you, a driver's license, registration, insurance, that he can't demand from you if you were simply walking down the street, can't demand for no good reason. But if you're the target of a traffic stop, he can demand, and you are obliged to provide your license, registration, insurance. And if you don't do those things, you are subject to arrest. And if you don't comply with the arrest, and compliance could be violent or non-violent, simply not obeying the lawful order is a non-violent non-compliance with arrest, the officer can use physical force to compel your compliance with that arrest you made necessary by not fulfilling your legal duty to provide the license, registration, and insurance. Now, most of us, I would imagine, have at some point been the target of a traffic stop. I know I certainly have, usually because my speedometer wasn't working correctly. And what do? You comply with the traffic stop. You provide your license, your insurance, your registration. Maybe you get a warning if you're lucky. That's usually I'm lucky. Sometimes you get a ticket that you have to pay. That's just the way a traffic stop goes, but it's no big problem. It's no big drama for anybody. Now, in this particular case, Arthur McNeil had a suspended license. He had drugs on his person. He had a large knife on the floorboard of the driver's side of the car, right where he was sitting. He had reasons for that officer not to run his driver's license, not to have a reason to pull him out of the car, search the vehicle, find the drugs, for example. So he decided to be non-compliant. Well, once you're non-compliant at a traffic stop, it opens up lots of bad outcomes for you that only exist because of your non-compliance. So let's take a look at the body-worn camera here of the officer involved, and we'll see the nature of the patently non-compliance of Arthur McNeil Jr. with his legal duties at a traffic stop to present his license, registration, insurance, and obey the lawful orders of this police officer, Bowers. Let me pull this up.
Yeah, Florida 24 Bravo Echo Charlie Whiskey on a silver Kia. I don't like this.
By the way, I noticed later in the video that this Kia that Arthur McNeil is driving is pretty beat up. It's got a lot of dents. It looks like it has substantial front end damage. The hood is kind of buckled in. It's hard to tell, but I think that was present before this stop. I don't think the police vehicles involved caused that damage, for example. which might have been another reason that the officer did the traffic stop. Was this vehicle just involved in an accident? They don't say that. They say because it was he didn't have his headlights on in the rain. So my first driver's license ever in my life was a Florida driver's license, by the way. And one of the things they taught us, this is not a rule in every state, but in Florida, if there's rain, if your wipers are on, your headlights have to be on. In fact, your headlights have to be on if there's just inclement weather that may reduce visibility. And if your headlights are not on under those circumstances, that's grounds for a traffic stop. That's one of the reasons the officer will cite here.
Yes, sir.
Is there a reason why you're popping the door open like that?
I don't have a window that works. Is there a reason that you're pulling me over?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why I'm pulling you over. For one thing, inclement weather, you don't have your lights on. Two things, you're not wearing your seatbelt.
It's daylight. I don't need the lights. And it's not weather. It's not raining.
Oh, this is inclement?
It's not raining.
Okay, I'm not arguing.
So, right, the deputy says, I'm not arguing with you. Yes, the deputy does not have to explain the nuances of traffic laws to you to stop. He doesn't even have to tell you why he's stopping you. That's a courtesy. Now, it's a prudent courtesy. Most people want to know why they've been stopped. You give them a reason, but you don't get to argue the reason on the side of the road. This is not a courtroom. This is not traffic court. The officer says, this is the reason I stopped you. You can say, I don't agree, but there's no discussion. The officer is not obligated to argue with you the merits of the legal claim here on the side of the road. In any case, this Arthur McNeil is wrong. It's not nighttime. That has nothing to do with the Florida law about headlights. You do have to have your headlights on at night, of course. That's another circumstance in which headlights are required. But that's not why this officer made the stop. And of course, immediately now the officer suspects, I'm sure, this is going to be a problematic traffic stop, unnecessarily, driven by the driver.
I'm telling you why I'm pulling you over. Give me your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance.
No, call your supervisor. Why?
Excuse me?
Call your supervisor.
Call your supervisor. This has become another one of these catchphrases of these non-compliant drivers. Like, I didn't do nothing. Call your supervisor. No driver has a right to have a supervisor called. This isn't some privilege card you get to throw out onto the roadway. And now the officer's like, oh my gosh, you got me. Now I have to call my supervisor. Every law enforcement officer doing a traffic stop is entitled to process that traffic stop himself. He's not compelled to produce a supervisor simply because you want one. There's a lot more cops than there are supervisors. They can't all be calling a supervisor every time a traffic stop is occurring. That would be ridiculous. There's nothing here to warrant a supervisor except for this driver's conduct.
Supervisor. Why did you pull me over?
35. I'm proper driver. I've already told you.
Why did you pull me over?
So the deputy very prudently is already calling for backup. He says, I have a non-cooperative driver, clearly.
Step out of the vehicle.
No,
Step out of the vehicle.
So I see a super chat came in that I want to address right away, because it makes a claim of merit. Kingslayer Damocles, $5, says the law he was stopped for requires it to be raining, foggy, or smoky. This day had none of that. This is a stop without probable cause. First of all, it's Florida. Rain starts and stops in Florida like that. I've personally been in Florida and watched a wall of rain approach me on the roadway. It was absolutely dry, and this wall of rain is coming, and then a couple minutes later, it turns off like a switch. So it could have been raining moments before when this deputy observed the car without his headlights on. The fact that it's not raining at this moment doesn't mean that didn't happen. Second of all, even if it was a stop without probable cause, you still don't get to argue that at the side of the road. You argue that in traffic court. This is not where a legal dispute occurs. So now at this point, Arthur McNeil has been pulled over. He's been argumentative with the officer, doesn't like why he was stopped. Asked why he popped open the door in the first place. He said, my window doesn't work, so that's why I opened my door so I could talk to you. Reasonable enough. Cops obviously don't like it when you pop your door open when they walk up to your vehicle, because it opens up tactical options for you if you're intending to be hostile. It's hard to fight from inside a car seat. It's much easier to fight if you can quickly extricate yourself from the vehicle, which you need to open the door to do. Either fight or escape. And these fights from these traffic stops can and often do have serious consequences. Many of you would have followed my coverage of the Christopher Shore case. This was the police officer in, was it Michigan? Now I'm blanking on what state it was in. But this was a police officer on his own in a patrol car, as they so commonly are now, did a traffic stop. And that driver became violently non-compliant. And Christopher Shore ended up having to shoot that guy in the course of the traffic stop in self-defense. And Christopher Shore went to trial for murder. And it was ultimately found to be self-defense. He was acquitted of the murder charge. But no one knew that going in. Christopher Shore was looking at a murder conviction possibility for several years before a jury acquitted him. That's how quickly these traffic stops with non-compliant operators can happen. And there's no reason for it. People just have to comply. There's no reason unless the driver has problems, has a suspended license, has warrants out, is drunk, has drugs in the car, some reason why he doesn't want to get engaged with police, just wants to be waved away. Here's another one. Mike $5 says no raindrops on the windows, illegal stop. There are in fact raindrops on the vehicle. We'll see that as we watch more of the body-worn camera footage. So that's not true. You should still comply, but it doesn't mean the cops are saints and in the right. No, of course not. Cops can make mistakes. People are allowed to contest traffic citations. I've done it. But you do that in court. You don't do it on the side of the road. All right, let's continue here. So now McNeil is shutting his car door, which of course is no good. This officer needs to communicate with the driver. There are things that need to be done.
25 seconds. For the 9-4, the driver just slammed the door and locked it. Yep.
Call your supervisor. This is all nonsense. And I see someone in the comments mention the deputy had also cited no seatbelt. Now the deputy he's not obligated to repeat over and over again every reason he has to make the traffic stop. He's made the traffic stop. He's not even required to give a reason. He can just demand your license, registration, insurance, go back to his car, process you for what he believes the violation is, and bring you back your ticket.
25 seconds. If anybody responding, come in from Commonwealth, block the vehicle, please. Keep your hands where I can see them, sir. My camera's on too. I've already told you. Okay. Okay. Right now you're under arrest for resisting. You understand? You're under arrest for resisting. The longer you take us on, the worse it's going to be. Keep your hands where I can see them, sir. Okay.
So I mentioned earlier, we just saw this patrol car come up on the front of the vehicle, go bumper to bumper. I mentioned earlier this Kia, the suspect McNeil is driving, has front end damage, like the front hood is buckled. And I thought maybe when this cop pulled up, he actually bumped the vehicle, like caused the damage. But you'll see when the police vehicle comes to a stop here, the Kia doesn't move, right? You would expect it to shake rather vigorously if it was struck by the police car, which makes me think the Kia had that front end damage already prior to the stop. And that may have been another reason that this deputy made the stop in the first place, even though he doesn't say that. And of course, they're going bumper to bumper to try to prevent the suspect car from making an effort to leave, right? He's non-compliant. He's in the driver's seat. He's in control of his Kia. They don't want this to turn into a chase.
Sir, this is your last warning to open the vehicle and exit before we're going to break the window. Open the door and exit or we are going to break the window. Open the door and exit or we are going to break the window.
So they've asked for driver's license, registration, insurance, and McNeil just says no. He refuses to comply with a legal duty. He has a legal duty to provide those documents when demanded in the course of a traffic stop, regardless of the reason for the traffic stop, regardless of whether the traffic stop he believes is legitimate or not. That's not argued at the side of the road. He has to provide those documents. He's refused. Now that he's refused, he's subject to arrest. You don't just get to say, no, I'm not providing my driver's license, and the cop lets you go. If you're non-compliant with your legal obligations at the traffic stop, you're subject to arrest, and they're telling him they're going to arrest him. Now, he's locked himself in his car. They can use the force necessary to secure the arrest. That's going to involve breaking the window. Do I have a right to break the window? If I just walk up to somebody's car that they're sitting in and break the window, if a civilian did this, would he be allowed to break the window? Probably not. There would need to be some additional bizarre circumstances that would justify my right to smash that window. But for a police officer, it's sufficient that he's authorized to make an arrest, and breaking the window is necessary to make the arrest. And here, this deputy is authorized to make this arrest as a function of McNeil refusing to provide the documents like a driver's license that he is legally obligated to provide. Can you guys see it? I'm going to make myself smaller here. Can you see the raindrops all over the car now? Right? They're on the door, they're on the door, they're on the window. So the car is covered in raindrops. The comment earlier that there's no raindrops in the car is just not true. And it'll be more obvious at other points.
No, he's under arrest. Open the door and exit. You are under arrest for resisting.
So there's only one way this ends now, right? Either the driver begins complying or violence is used to compel his compliance. Oh, the cops, there's no ending here where the cops just all decide, you know what, we changed our minds, we're all going home.
Open the door and exit. You are under arrest for resisting. Open the door and exit. You are under arrest for resisting. Open the door and exit. You are under arrest for resisting.
So this officer, this deputy, gives this command, I believe, 7 times. Open the door. You're under arrest. You're resisting. I see a lot of great comments in the chat, folks, but they need to be $5 super chats in order to for me to address them during the live stream. That's the rule. Again, Mike says, no raindrops on windows, illegal stop. You should still comply, but it doesn't mean, oh, maybe I read that one already. Maybe it's not a replay. There are drops on the car, clearly. And we're going to see more deputies show up.
Vehicle's locked in. He's locked it up. He's putting the window down. The passenger side to talk to
So right now, you can't see it here, but right now there's another deputy, the deputy who arrived in this car. We see here, who's on the passenger side of the car. McNeil has lowered the rear window on the passenger side a couple inches, and the deputy on that side is talking very reasonably with McNeil. We'll see his body-worn camera footage of that other deputy in a moment. Amazing Disgrace says, police show too much tolerance for this behavior. That's how this has become so common to begin with. Well, police, like all of us, respond to incentives. Thanks for the $5, Amazing Grace. Police conduct themselves in accordance with how their institution trains and allows them and disciplines them to conduct. We see plenty of Ferguson effect departments where the police basically don't do anything because they've been trained to not do anything. They're punished if they're proactive in law enforcement. This cop is being subject to some punishment right now. We'll see when we look at the sheriff's press office statement video. He's suffering negative consequences right now. Not very serious negative consequences. He's not being criminally charged. That's already off the table, so that's good for the deputy. But he is suffering sanctions at the moment. And he may be facing additional administrative, job-related sanctions for his use of force choices here. And so every other cop in that department sees that, the more negative consequences this deputy suffers, the less likely these other officers, the other deputies in the sheriff's office, are likely to engage in similar conduct. And if you think the conduct was wrong, then you think that's a good thing. And if you think the conduct is necessary to maintain order at a traffic stop, you think it's a bad thing. But police are not their own actors. They have bosses. They work for superior officers. They work for a department. They work for the city. They work for the government. And they are subject to administrative and legal sanction if they do things that others perceive to have been wrong. Jonathan Ogle says, note the arriving police car does not have its lights on. Again, it doesn't appear to be raining right now, but obviously it was raining. So when this deputy made the decision to stop McNeil, it might have been raining. Rain in Florida stops very quickly, starts and stops very quickly. It's not like New England, where it's like a gradual onset. It's a drizzle, and then it gets heavier and heavier, and then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Rain in Florida can often be very much like an on-off switch. So it's quite possible Deputy Bowen saw McNeil in the rain without his lights on, made the stop, and then the rain stopped. Once the rain stopped, maybe you're no longer required to have your lights on, and this cop car doesn't. But even if the cop car was also breaking that law, that doesn't mean that McNeil gets a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's got nothing to do with McNeil. Okay, back here. So we have more deputies showing up.
Hey, I'm about to break the window.
By the way, we'll see that once all the deputies arrive, about half of them roughly appear to be black males themselves.
I'm about to break the window. All right, go for it. Exit the vehicle now. Exit the vehicle. Show me your hands. Here.
By the way, they would later find a large knife on the floorboard at the driver's feet in this car. I don't believe they're aware of the presence of that knife now, or guns would be out. So I don't think they discover the knife or aware of the knife until after the handcuffing has been accomplished. But that's why they want to see the hands, because the cops know from experience and training that, you know, you make a traffic stop. If the bad guy's got a weapon, it could be on his person. It could be accessible within the vehicle. That's why it's so important to see his hands. He's not just walking down the sidewalk where you'd also like to see his hands, but he's in a vehicle where things like weapons tend to be secreted.
What is your reason? No, don't forget.
Put your hands behind your back. Resist. Hands behind your back.
All right, so I want to show you how long this is actually going on. This is 4:27 now in this video. So when did it start? They get the door open. They drag him out. Okay, that's 4:15. So 4:27 is 12 seconds. 12 seconds of hands-on use of force by these officers. And then what do the officers do? Is this a sustained beating like Rodney King with batons? Or do they immediately stop? And by the way, you notice the suspect still wants to have a conversation. What did I do? What did I do? I didn't do nothing.
No, don't forget.
Put your hands behind your back. Resist. Hands behind your back.
Cuffs are on. It's over. You hear the click?
What's wrong with you?
What you mean? I was putting my hands behind my back. I was going to
Ain't no talking now, man. Ain't no talking.
There's no talking now. There was a time for talking. The time for talking was when you were asked for your driver's license and registration and insurance, and you were legally obligated to turn that over. The time for talking is over once you've met the conditions for being subject to lawful arrest.
What's going on, man?
You're under arrest.
Look, there's that body damage I was telling you about the front of the Kia.
No.
There's lots of dents all over this car.
Yes, bro. Yes. No reason, bro. You gonna throw my phone like that, bro?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it off now, man.
Yeah, the cops had to go to the street too. They're on the asphalt too. We may see some of them got scrapes and cuts on their hands and so forth. They don't want to have to fight with somebody. They'd rather just have a day where nothing much happens.
And I'm just trying to have
You just got to see what
And by the way, the reason the cops are using overwhelming force like this is precisely to avoid the Christopher Shore situation. The cop up in Michigan who did a traffic stop had a one-on-one fight with a much larger, stronger suspect who was gaining control of the officer's weapons, and the officer ultimately was compelled to shoot and kill that suspect. He was criticized at trial by the state's expert for you should have waited for backup. If you waited for backup, you have overwhelming force, and it's less likely you have to escalate to deadly force. So you use overwhelming non-deadly force for the safety of the suspect and the officers. It's safer to do it this way than to be tentative. Once you've decided to make the arrest of a non-compliant suspect, you want to secure that arrest as quickly and non-lethally as possible, in part to avoid the necessity of having to escalate to deadly force. And by the way, there's resisting with violence and there's resisting without violence. They're both resisting. If you're physically fighting the cops, you're resisting with violence. That's a more serious criminal offense because you're threatening to inflict injury on the police. But if all you do is lay on your stomach on the ground and pull your arms and elbows inside under your body, so it's difficult for the police to grab your arms and handcuff you for arrest, you are still resisting. That's still a crime. You're not committing acts of violence on the police, but you are still committing the crime of resisting nonviolently. You have a legal duty. We all have a legal duty to comply with lawful arrest, even if the arrest is wrong. That's determined later in another forum.
Your partner didn't even ask. Marijuana in his right pocket. Yes, it is. So what close the door?
So they found the marijuana in his right pocket, under 20 grams, I believe it was. And he would be charged for the marijuana possession and take a plea deal on the marijuana possession.
If you see him pull up, because man, what you mean? He talking about arresting me and stuff, bro. I didn't do nothing.
Go resisting, idiot.
He talking about arresting me. I didn't do nothing wrong. Now, I don't know. Is it possible that this guy, is he so stupid? Are they so misinformed that they don't understand that they have a legal duty to present their license and registration? Do they really not understand that they're not allowed to resist lawful orders, to be non-compliant? Do they not understand that nonviolent resistance is still a crime? That they're required to submit to lawful arrest? Could they be that dumb? Or are they acting maliciously? I mean, those of us who kind of inherently understand these legal obligations, we see this and we like, well, this guy's just making crap up. But maybe in his head, he thinks he's really entitled to have a conversation with the police and talk his way out of an arrest. Maybe he thinks he's entitled to be non-compliant. Maybe he thinks he's entitled to demand a supervisor, and a supervisor has to be brought to him. That doesn't justify anything he's doing. We're all still required to obey the law, whether we properly understand the law or not. But it suggests to me that someone's doing a grotesque disservice to these young black men. If they're being raised to believe these things, that could readily result in their death. I mean, this traffic stop could have gone way worse. If one of those cops had seen the knife on the floorboard during the process of pulling this guy out of the car when his hands were still free, he could well have been shot and killed. Lawfully shot and killed. If someone had reasonably perceived, even if mistakenly perceived, that he had dipped a hand to reach for that knife and they knew the knife was there, they would have lawfully shot him. He'd be dead now. Over what? Over a traffic stop that he ultimately took plea convictions to anyway?
Idiot.
I didn't do nothing wrong, sir. Can you back me up to the car so I can lean up? You're both my.
And how fearful is he of these cops? He just asked them, hey, he's sitting on his butt on the street now. He asked them, can you back me up to the car so he can lean back against the car and be more comfortable? Does this strike you as someone who has a subjective belief that he's in mortal danger from these police officers? Now he's standing up. They're searching his pockets, of course, for weapons and such. And now they're going to search the vehicle. And this is where they finally see the knife. Now, I have to say, in the second body-worn camera, there is a segment where they say they freeze frame it in the press conference, like to show the knife. I have to be honest, I can't see a knife in that freeze frame. I see a bottle of water. Maybe it's just the resolution of the image. But I don't think anyone's seriously contesting that the knife was actually there.
25. So if you start rescue, kid 67, approximately 30-year-old Bravo Mike, laceration to the lip.
So now everyone has little lacerations and abrasions and contusions because this driver compelled them to go hands-on, to throw fists, to compel his compliance with lawful arrest. He just made it harder for everybody. And frankly, the fact that the cops don't unlawfully exact retribution for this hassle just is to their credit. Obviously, they're not allowed to do that. They shouldn't. I can tell you, cops I knew in the 1970s would have given this guy a few extra for being this non-compliant, just for causing them trouble. Thankfully, these cops don't do that. They're not supposed to do that. They should be prosecuted if they do that. But they don't. They don't.
Thanks for watching this highlight segment of our full-length Law Self-Defense live stream. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to give us a like and subscribe for more expert analysis on politics, law, and how to be hard to convict. And to watch the full-length episode of this show, just click right here. Stay safe.